So when you hear Coachella, you probably think of music, celebrities, and outrageous fashion. But there's always more going on behind the scenes. And according to Rolling Stone, the Anschutz Corporation, which owns the parent company that puts on the festival, donated $75,000 to anti-abortion Republican Attorneys General Association. And this was just days after Roe was overturned and while the association was fundraising off that very decision. Joining me now is Judd Legum. He's an author and founder of Popular.info, and he co-wrote the Rolling Stone piece about Coachella. Judd, I'm so happy to have you here. We've been trying to have you here for a while, ever since this explosive reporting came out. So very happy to have you. Walk us through exactly how Coachella's parent company is funding anti-choice, anti-abortion efforts.
Well, as you mentioned, this is the Anschutz Corporation, and this is really one of the major two corporations that are in charge of live music. There's Live Nation, and then there's Anschutz. And it famously does Coachella, but also all sorts of other popular festivals, tours like Elton John. It's a huge player in the music business. And what we've discovered by looking at filings that are filed with the IRS is that the corporation itself, not the owner, who's a billionaire named Phil Anschutz, but the corporation itself donated $75,000 to the Republican Attorneys General Association. And this is one of the organizations that is doing more than any other organization to roll back reproductive rights. I mean, they're fundraising based on a promise to roll back reproductive rights, but these attorneys general are playing a critical role. In fact, it was Lynn Fitch, who is a member of the Republican Attorneys General Association, that really was behind the strategy that overturned Roe. And virtually everyone, 24 of the 26 members of RAGA, filed a brief supporting her efforts. And now they are looking to, through that position of a state attorney general, roll back rights in a bunch of states where reproductive rights are still hanging in a balance. So this $75,000 is not an extraordinary amount of money, but it will be used. It's already being used to try to install attorneys general who will vigorously enforce anti-abortion laws.
Yeah, and I have to say the Anschutz Corporation denies that it or its owners received, saw, or was aware of the RAGA fundraising solicitation. And they did note in a statement to the Rolling Stone, and that you included in your reporting, that they've been donating to RAGA since 2014, and that as a personal matter, the owner, Philip Anschutz, believes in a woman's right to choose and did not support the reversal of Roe. But still, $75,000 may not be a lot, but that funding does come from people buying ticket sales, and they're buying, or the ticket sales rather, and people are buying tickets to see these artists. And some of the artists who performed at Coachella tweeted out or posted statements about how disappointed they were after Roe was overturned, from artists like Billie Eilish to Megan Thee Stallion. Do you anticipate, since this information is out there, that maybe artists might not perform at Coachella, knowing that they could be contributing to anti-choice, anti-abortion efforts?
It's a very interesting question. And one of the reasons I write an independent newsletter called Popular Information, but I partnered with Rolling Stone for this report. And one of the reasons is I wanted to make sure that we contacted all of these artists and give them an opportunity to comment. And Rolling Stone was really great about reaching out to all of the artists you mentioned and many, many more. And we didn't hear back from any of them yet. And I think the reason why is there's a lot of money at stake and there's not very many options. As I said, this is one of two major corporations that control virtually the entire live music industry when it comes to major acts. So will an artist stand up? We'll have to see. I think one of the big Coachella happened before this report came out. So obviously there wasn't an opportunity there, but there's the Firefly Festival, which is a major festival. It's happening in Delaware in September. Dua Lipa, Charlie XCX, a bunch of major acts who have spoken out in opposition to the overturning of Roe and spoken out in favor of abortion rights are scheduled to appear there. And now we know that this corporation takes the revenues in part from these festivals and puts them towards anti-abortion organizations. And it's not just the Republican Attorneys General Association. The Anschutz Corporation has also donated $500,000 to the Senate Leadership Fund, which is the super PAC dedicated to putting Republicans back in charge of the Senate. And Mitch McConnell has said, if he gains power, if he is back in charge of the Senate, he will consider a national abortion ban.